Want to stay up to date with everything that's happening on the show? Or do you have a story that you'd like to submit for one of our Listener Stories episodes? You can get in touch with the show via the website at www.hauntedukpodcast.com, on Instagram at hauntedukpodcast, on X at hauntedukpod, or you can email us at contactus@hauntedukpodcast.com. We're also on Facebook and TikTok. And if you want to support the show, you can do it via either Patreon or Ko-fi. Both platforms have exactly the same content, but work in slightly different ways. One of the advantages of Patreon is its sleek user interface, but if you want to avoid those pesky additional charges Apple, Google and Patreon apply to your subscription, then why not give Ko-fi a try? Simply open a browser window and type ko-fi/Haunted UK Podcast. That's Ko-fi/Haunted UK Podcast, and you'll soon find us. Whichever platform you choose, we're sure you'll enjoy the bonus content. Thanks for listening and enjoy the episode. This is the Haunted UK Podcast's Short Haunts. Welcome, dear listeners, to our series of short haunts. A shot of scary, just for you. So grab a hot chocolate, maybe a tea, maybe something stronger, because this is Haunted UK Podcast's Short Haunts, Angel or Apparition. Many of us go through life with little or no interaction with the paranormal, whilst others seem like beacons who cannot help but attract it. As we've heard so many times on this podcast, the supernatural and paranormal can become embroiled in the lives of so many different people. Scientists, doctors, care workers, lawyers. It doesn't care whose lives it touches. And whilst many of the stories which we've heard and also researched consist of accounts which left those at the centre of the activity completely terrified, there are a handful of stories which go against the grain. One such story is that of a man in the north of England who, whilst returning home along a coastal path after a late-night walk, slipped and fell some 60 feet down a cliffside, landing very hard on the rocks of an enclosed bay. Against all the odds, and with horrific injuries, this man survived the fall. But his ordeal wasn't over yet, because high tide was coming and darkness was setting in. Unable to move, the man was at the mercy of the cold sea, and with severe hypothermia setting in, he resigned himself to the fact that he'd be dead by morning. But something happened. He went on record saying he thought he'd lost consciousness, but was surprised when he saw a warm, bright light at the end of a tunnel. Even though he knew his legs were so badly injured that he was unable to walk or even stand, he said he felt the sensation of his body lifting and walking down the tunnel towards the light. As he reached the end of the tunnel, he found himself at the foot of a bridge, with figures in the distance on the other side. As he started to walk across the bridge, a soothing voice rang out, telling him that he couldn't cross the bridge. He was to turn around and go back. It wasn't his time. As morning broke, this man who had somehow survived not only the impact of the fall, but also severe injuries and the effects of extreme hypothermia caused by the frigid water, was discovered by a man walking his dog. Emergency teams quickly arrived at the scene and a rescue was mounted. Despite almost every scenario working against him, this man made a full recovery. But what saved him? Was this light and tunnel and near-death experience? Or was it some sort of paranormal entity looking out for him, protecting him, making sure he survived? Was this the case of a guardian angel saving the life of a man who found himself in terrible circumstances? Some studies which have been conducted on those whose lives have reportedly been saved by angels, or who report seeing that familiar light at the end of a tunnel, have concluded it's nothing more than areas of the brain, such as the temporal lobe, producing phenomena such as hallucinations, memory flashbacks, and voices caused by the brain being under incredible stress in that moment. But this surely can't be the blanket explanation for every witness who's experienced an entity, an angel, a near-death experience. The witness of the following short haunt wishes to remain anonymous, so for the purpose of this episode, we'll call him Danny. The following story is nothing short of amazing, not only because of the possible mixture of different aspects of the paranormal, but also because of the huge amount of courage and bravery that Danny displayed himself, in circumstances which can only be described as terrifying and harrowing. But was it these difficult circumstances which Danny found himself in that opened some sort of portal through which help materialized in the most unsuspecting way? It's time to hand over to Danny. I just turned 40 and had a relatively healthy, active lifestyle. I ate right, worked out 5 times a week, and had a busy schedule at work as a hairstylist. In hindsight, I'd already started to get subtle symptoms of an illness onset, but at this time didn't know what that was. In the 5 years prior to turning 40, I would get subtle symptoms like a flash fever that would last just a few moments and then go away. I also began to suffer from chronic low-grade headaches, feeling incredibly fatigued and short bouts of dizziness. But because these symptoms occurred randomly, I chalked them up to a lack of sleep, being super busy at work. Even when symptoms started to affect my vision and I began seeing strange auras, I still didn't think anything was wrong with me. It was early September 2010, and I remember the day like it happened yesterday. I got out of bed and immediately felt so winded that I had to sit on the edge of the bed to catch my breath. This was then coupled with another spell of dizziness, but after a while, I was able to get my energy up enough to get ready for work. I made my lunch, packed my computer, and off I went to the car as my partner was driving me to work on this particular morning. My partner noticed that I'd passed out several times as we were driving, and realizing something was wrong, immediately drove me to the local hospital. I was admitted immediately upon our arrival at the hospital emergency room, as they checked my heart rate and found it to be off the charts. I was also once again suffering from dizziness, extreme fatigue, and was told that my skin had developed a grey complexion. I was immediately placed in an examination room and was told to wait there for a doctor. My partner left at this time as he had errands to run, so I waited, and waited, and waited. A doctor eventually entered the room and said he was there to examine me. I still remember very vividly so many details about this doctor. He was of African descent, about 5 feet 9 inches tall and around 40 years old. He also wore a pair of rather large, shiny gold-rimmed spectacles, very reminiscent of the style from the 1970s. I remembered thinking to myself how unusual it was for somebody to be wearing this style of glasses. I wondered whether they were in fashion again. The gold frames were so shiny they literally sparkled. As sick as I still had my faculties, and it wasn't because the illness was affecting my eyesight. It was at this point the doctor began examining me, and to my shock, his hands were ice cold. He went through all of my medical records and told me not to worry, that everything will be okay. Then he left, never to return. I was subsequently fully admitted to the hospital, where I stayed for nearly 2 months before finally being diagnosed with a rare form of B Cell Lymphoma. Only 2% of diagnosed cases survive this type of cancer, and I was in stage 4. After going through 3 rounds of chemotherapy in late December, I was told that the chemo hadn't worked, and I started to develop tumours in my abdomen. The oncologist decided to ramp up the chemotherapy, telling me that the dosage would be much higher and much more aggressive. So aggressive was the first round of chemo that I lost all feeling in my legs, hands and arms and could no longer walk without assistance or a walker. I was told that I would never be able to style hair again and that I would be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. Not being able to go back to the job I loved and being told that a wheelchair would be my only choice of mobility was utterly horrifying. But there was much, much worse still to come. I was told in no uncertain terms that if this aggressive chemotherapy didn't work, I would only have approximately 1 month to live. How do you react when a doctor is telling you this? What do you do? I had to accept this as my fate, and I found myself having a spiritual awakening, which helped me with the acceptance of this. Do miracles exist? Do they really happen? Well, I do believe in miracles, because within a week, the tumours in my abdomen went away. I continued with a second series of aggressive chemotherapy, and by the end of this treatment, I learned I'd been fast-tracked for a bone marrow transplant at another hospital. Shortly thereafter, the time came for me to transfer to the new hospital, which was the location of an extensive bone marrow transplant centre. Prior to being transferred, I spoke with the head nurse of the floor as I wanted to give thanks for all those who took care of me. I asked the nurse if I could speak to the African doctor who had examined me in the emergency department. Now, the nurse had worked at this hospital for more than 30 years, and she stared at me with a puzzled look on her face. She knew practically everyone in the ER department, and she told me that there was no such person working there. The realization quickly began to set in, that I had possibly been visited by either an angel or a ghost. The apparition, or whatever you want to call it, that visited me was in physical form. He touched my wrist to check my pulse. I was simply shocked and amazed. After my bone marrow transplant was deemed a success, I beat stage 4 rare lymphoma, and I am now in full remission. Looking back now, the apparition that showed itself to me said that I would be okay, and not to worry. I never ever thought that I was going to die from this illness, as that had been what I always believed, even despite the harshness of the treatments and their side effects. I knew from the beginning stages of this battle that it was going to be the hardest thing I'd ever have to go through, but I also knew that I wouldn't die. Since beating this rare form of B Cell Lymphoma, my achievements have continued. I don't use a wheelchair anymore, as my hands and legs have now fully recovered. I've even gone back to work, back to the career I love, when I was told that it would be virtually impossible to do so. It's been over 12 years now since my time in hospital, and I still ponder what that entity was. An angel? An apparition? Or something else? Even as sick as I was, I still had my mental faculties about me, even though the lymphoma was already affecting my organs. I remember getting quite bored of waiting in the examination room and thinking, When is this doctor going to come and see me? Little did I realize at the time that I was about to have an encounter with something that I cannot explain, even to this day. And whilst many would experience terror at the thought of witnessing something like this, I felt blessed, because for me, miracles were about to take place. And that is where this short haunt ends. Danny's sheer determination and bravery when being faced with such slim odds of survival are truly amazing, though perhaps this was simply his body reacting positively to the treatments which were being administered. At the start of this, when Danny was in the examination room, the levels of stress and anxiety pulsing through every molecule in his body must have been incredibly high. Maybe it was those raw and coarse emotions which brought on the hallucination of the doctor entering the room. But can we really believe this as a possible explanation? Danny was extremely confident that all of his faculties were absolutely fine, and he was more than aware of what was going on around him. His description of this doctor, his height, approximate age, being of African descent, those strange, highly polished, sparkling gold spectacles. Was all this just imagination? I personally find Danny's story extremely compelling, and have heard from many people in hospitals around the world their accounts of visitors entering their rooms, giving them comfort and hope, only to find that these visitors were seen by nobody else. Even staff at some hospitals have reported strange happenings such as Danny's. So are they all experiencing hallucinations? Or are there really angels, spiritual paranormal saviors, walking the corridors of hospitals all over the world? That's down to you to decide. But if you've had a similar experience to that of Danny's, why not get in touch with the show? Tell your story. Because the next person to be featured on A Short Haunt could be you.